You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, welcome to Don't F with the Original.
With Nicolas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
I'm Dennis P., a horror film enthusiast.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. And today, we three are going to talk about horror remakes. We're continuing our big Don't F with the Original series. Now we're talking horror movies, which is why you, Dennis P., are here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, a little, horror movie enthusiast.
We need that sometimes.
As opposed to me.
Yes, that's the thing. Nick, you don't like horror movies at all, usually.
Not at all. I watch a few of them. Some of them are good. They're worth watching, but general rule, I don't watch many.
You're not afraid or anything? It's just you just don't like the genre?
I don't like their genre.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and tough, because we're going to start right away with something I like to call show and tell, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to recommend a couple of horror movies that have either been remade or are remakes themselves. Why don't we start with our esteemed co-host, Dennis P.
A movie I would recommend that has been remade would be My Bloody Valentine, actually. It was a pretty good remake.
That's the one, the 3D one.
Yes, the 3D one, correct.
I like that one as well. I think it was one of the first 3D movies that had come out back in the day before we just got really tired of it.
That's true. And that movie actually was filmed with the idea of it being in 3D. Thus, it had a lot of special effects and a lot of little 3D tricks, if you will, that played, that was a little bit of an eye candy, shall we say, and made the movie even more enjoyable.
I agree. It's a total geek show in 3D, which is what I love about it. Yeah. One thing bothered me about the 3D, though, while you're talking about it, there's one scene where he's looking at the screen of a digital camera, like of a camcorder,
yeah,
and it's in 3D in the screen. And it's like, I've never had a camcorder that shows me images in 3D. And why is that in 3D?
Aren't 3D movies usually a lot darker? And horror movies are usually kind of pretty dark as well. So didn't that affect it at all?
Oh, you mean for the contrast, right?
Yeah, for the contrast.
No, I don't know. I think this one was done really well. I think with the real D technology and everything. And I didn't feel that it was much darker or anything for myself. I don't know, Dimitri.
No, I agree. Actually, it's really well filmed. I think it's Patrick Lussier who directed it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And he has a very nice color palette, which is surprising because his background is actually editor. He was an editor for Wes Craven for the longest time.
Yeah, that's right.
And but he has a nice color palette. He did the same thing with Drive Angry, shot in 3D, and he compensates. He makes bright movies, even if it's a horror movie. Bloody Valentine takes place mostly at night, but he always makes sure to place the lights at very strategic places so that it has a nice sort of flow to it, especially. My Bloody Valentine was kind of nice. Most of it takes place in a mine because the killer's a miner.
Yeah.
As in somebody who works in a mine, not a kid.
Okay.
It's not Justin Bieber. And so what he does is he used the lamps of the mine to sort of give you bright splotches of 3D, and the sort of the edges of the frame would go dark. It was actually a nice contrast.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. Like you see when you see a flying pickaxe coming at you and stuff like that. It was very effective, very very effective.
Well, mine is a movie that is a remake and that is remade, so it's both. John Carpenter's The Thing, which is one of the rare horror movies I really like, and if you haven't seen it, you should watch it before the remake.
Should you? Because the remake's a prequel, technically speaking, dealing with the Norwegian station.
Yeah. So
should you wait, see it after, so you can experience the story chronologically, or?
No, I think you should see it before, so you can compare.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot as well.
Yeah, that's a good choice, yeah.
Interestingly, I also have a movie that is simultaneously a remake and a movie that was remade. I'm talking about The Tale of Two Sisters, Shuanghua, Shuanghyan, I don't know, I don't speak Korean. And
oh.
No, it's because it's Shuanghua Honghyun, but I'm pretty sure I'm completely mispronouncing it.
Okay.
The remake of it is called The Uninvited. If you've ever seen The Uninvited, it's not a bad movie. It's fine. And the thing that's interesting about it is that The Uninvited is fine, but it really only remakes the first 2/3 of the original Korean movie.
Really?
There's an entire other act that comes after in a Korean movie that is so beautiful and so hurtful and so poetic, and I feel a little bit like the American movie focused too much on a parlor trick and not enough on the poetry that came with that story. So if you like The Uninvited, I think you're going to completely fall in love with The Tale of Two Sisters, which is a superior movie. And I'm saying that from the perspective of a guy who doesn't really dislike The Uninvited that much.
Mm-hmm. I'll check it out then. I haven't had the chance to see that one.
And let's move on to the conversation proper. We're talking about horror remakes, because one of the things when we were blocking out the episodes for Don't F with the Original, our summer series, is that we realized that there are way more remakes of horror movies than any other genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you guys, why do you think that is? Why is the horror genre more prone to have remakes in it?
Well, a lot of them are really big, famous series, like Friday the 13th or Halloween, like they're pretty big. They have a lot of sequels, and I think at one point they've made so many sequels that maybe people are kind of fed up of the same thing, and maybe they're thinking horror movies are easier to just reboot them, if you will, and remake them and start over again.
Yeah, it's sort of like after a while the series just sort of jumped the shark, so it's might as well start from scratch.
I think that's why horror movies tend to be remade more than more other genres.
Yeah, I think, and my reason I think also kind of fits into that is that how many different things can you have killing people and scaring people? Okay, you can have murderers, and then monsters and stuff like that, but eventually, you go back to the same thing that's scaring people, so why not just make a remake of the original thing, Oh,
come on, there's plenty of possibilities. You can't go in the woods and have Sasquatch kill you, Bigfoot kill you, Wendigo kill you.
Yeah, completely different, so just make the remake of the Sasquatch one instead,
Yeah.
It's probably it. If you have an effective killer and you want to use it, then, well, why don't you just use it?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And going with what you both said is the horror genre is particular in the sense that its sequels are almost remakes. You look at Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, and 5. They're all pretty much Nightmare on Elm Street 1, just with different kids being killed. You know?
Yeah.
Halloween has sort of the same thing, and certainly, Jason Friday the 13th is probably the biggest perpetrator of that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Wait, isn't the killer in the first one his mother, and then in all the other ones it's him?
Yeah.
So that's not the same thing.
But they remade it though. They remade it where he's. They did address a bit the mom very, very briefly, and then they remade it in a way where he's the main.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they condensed the first 3 movies into one movie, which was like, why?
Good God, I find that was a bad remake.
More killing.
Yeah. Because Friday the 13th is one of those series that I wish they hadn't rebooted, because they were so close to reaching the 13th installment.
Mm-hmm.
They were at number 11 when they rebooted the series. Like, 2 more movies. Just make 2 more movies so you can do the 13th Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Everybody would have gone to see it just because.
It's the 13th, yeah. I think it's the longest sequel-wise, right? From all the horror series?
If you don't count the remakes, yes.
Yes. Not the remakes.
If you count the remakes, however, Halloween is actually catching up quite nicely.
It's catching up, yeah. That's true.
But the thing with Friday the 13th as well is that I don't feel it jumped the shark so much as embraced the shark. Good God. And made sweet love to it.
Yeah, that was terrible. I mean, that's I think maybe one of the series where I was kind of excited and looking forward to a remake. Usually, I'm not really for remakes at all. I'm kind of like, you know what? This is the original. Don't F with it. However, like you said, it did so many things to the shark that, just thinking about Jason Takes Manhattan and then, Part 9 and...
But at that point, it's so awesome. Like, for me, it's sort of like they rebooted it. It's like, we want to go back to a more gritty, frightening Jason. And it's like, but the Jason series doesn't really make sense anymore anyway. It's just do your serious movies and pretend it's a continuation. It doesn't matter.
So Jason in Space was totally in canon with the following. It all followed, like...
It could. I'm going to go through the entire history because it's hilarious.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so you have the mother... In the first one, you have the mother who's the killer. Ooh, spoiler alert. The second one has Jason with a pillowcase on his head. Is it a
pillowcase or is it a potato bag? I don't know.
It's a potato bag.
I think so, yeah. With only one eye, one hole from one eye.
And it's completely ridiculous because that he's still alive and he never really died, but he lived in the woods, but somehow never went to see his mother, but stalked her, so he knows she's dead, so he's going to take his revenge on the people who killed the mother, who killed them because they killed him.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you're like,
If that makes any sense, right?
that makes sense.
it's Jaws 4, the revenge sense.
Oh god.
And then the third one follows that same continuity, except he finally gains his hockey mask, and then he dies. Yeah?
Yes.
No,
The
final
fourth one.
chapter,
The fourth one. Yeah, the final
The fourth one, they
dies.
finally kill him off because the thing is the creators don't like Friday the 13th. Like, one of the running jokes is that the creators of Friday the 13th never really liked their series that much, but it made so much money that they kept being pushed to make another one. So they kept trying to just end the freaking series.
And
Wow.
I think, yeah, and the fourth one was the last, like, serious Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, I guess they were just, oh, you're giving us money to make another movie, see what we produce, and they were just going crazy.
Well,
and-
the fifth one actually is almost kind of serious because they just introduced a new killer.
But the thing is also, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like with a mind game, like he thinks he's Jason or whatever.
Yeah.
Part 6 and 7 were very fun, especially part 6.
I think both are
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
You like 6 more, and I like 7 more.
Yeah, but they're both, I would peg them pretty much on the same, yeah.
And that's when they just threw their hands in the air and they went like, whatever.
They turned him into a zombie, basically.
Yeah,
like,
because they had pressure to bring Jason back. And I was like, well, we kill him off. Like, leave us alone. It's like, no, the fans want the Jason. And they're like, it's fine. He's a zombie now. He comes back from the dead from electricity.
Yeah,
into
lightning
his
hit him.
grave. Like somebody wants to make sure he's dead, digs him out, puts like a metallic thing into his heart, but then thunder hits and revives him. Like that's actually the premise. And you're like, congratulations, you just made this so stupid. It's awesome.
And funny enough, the opening sequence, right after that opening sequence, you actually see him walking out like James Bond and throwing his machete with the blood going down.
Nice.
So you knew it just became campy,
Oh, yeah. It just went like, F it.
Have fun now, yeah.
That's it. If we're gonna go to make a series that has 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, dude. The 7th one is Jason versus a psychic, which is my favorite one. He's fighting a psychic. It's like Jean Grey from the X-Men faces Jason. It's awesome.
Literally, it was wicked. And because at this point, what I like about part 6 is that he realizes that he's superhuman now. Like he's ripping off limbs. He's getting shots like, wait a minute, like, nothing's happening to me. So he's like, oh, I'm gonna have fun with this. So, like, a normal woman now, like heroine, like, wouldn't be able to survive against them anymore, right? So they introduced one with powers.
Then he goes to Manhattan.
Yeah, that was just terrible for me.
That was awesome because it's called Jason Takes Manhattan,
Yeah.
and the entire movie takes place on a boat on their way to Manhattan. They
most of
only
it.
reach Manhattan in like the last 10 minutes or so, and he goes into the stores and like acts like a Ninja Turtle. It's actually what it is.
It was really ridiculous.
Wow.
It's preposterous.
Yeah.
Then
Part
they
9.
decided to kill him off.
Yeah.
And he became a worm that invades people from the inside and controls their bodies.
Yeah. You barely see him as Jason, maybe the first 10 minutes or so, and then the ending.
Yeah.
At that point, you need to continue with the Jason.
The only
Why
cool
do
part
that?
about the ending, I think the ending of that movie was when you see his mask in the ground and Freddy's arm comes out and I think pulls it in.
Yeah.
That was the only cool part of the movie. So
Which led to what came out as part 11, but in continuity it's probably part 10. But it leads to Freddy versus Jason.
Okay.
crossover. That was a cool
and
movie.
that one was really good. Actually,
Yeah,
that one was really,
good.
really good.
Yeah.
And then he goes into space in Jason X, which is the official part 10, and where they explain that like he has a weird healing factor where you just can't kill him. Let's study that in space.
Because he was frozen in the past, and we're in the future now.
And they knew that the next one they wanted to go back to serious, like where they took the joke as far as they can possibly take it with Jason in space.
He was half cyborg for crying out loud at the end of the movie.
So they have him crashing onto another planet because it's in the future that lives like it's in the 1980s because it's sort of a future Amish community, and he falls in Camp Crystal Lake in that new planet so that they can just pretend that none of it happened in the next one.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they decided to reboot. They're like,
Why reboot it? You're at the beginning already.
I know.
Maybe they just rebooted it because it was the trend at the time.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, good God.
Another reason, though, why I think remakes are particularly prevalent in the horror genre, to get back to the conversation.
Boo.
Let's go through the history of Michael Myers and Halloween.
Oh, God.
Because his is even more embarrassing, because at least the Jason one, they knew they were doing something stupid, but the Halloween ones, they were actually taking themselves seriously and reaches even
The whole
more
way.
stupid.
Yeah, good God, yeah.
When you have Michael raping his niece to give birth to the child of Satan for warlocks, I think you've reached a new low.
I think you've reached the ultimate low.
I was having this argument with some other writer who said, like, no, part 3 is the worst one because it doesn't even have Michael Myers. And it's like, okay, look, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is undeniably bad because it is about an evil toy maker trying to harness the power of the Shamrock. But it is not child molestation and incest bad.
yeah, there's a different level of bad.
People on the pod, you listen to this, can't see my jaw drop, can they?
Okay. All this to say that quite obviously these long-running series sort of, as you say, jump the shark.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because they're more obscure films, because the horror genre is not mainstream, and it never will be by virtue of the sort of subject matter it tackles. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of producers feel that, well, you know, it's a nice occasion to reintroduce people to a story that they like. Mm-hmm. Because fewer people have seen it. It's sort of like you can't really remake Terminator and Terminator 2 because everybody's seen it.
Yeah.
But a horror movie, even the ones that are beloved, it's always a cult following at best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
It's a good argument.
I think Scream, brought back the horror genre. Did it become more common, or more maybe one of the horror franchises that's more common? Like it's less like a cult following or anything? It was more
Scream
open?
is a sensation, I agree. And I think that's why you can make a part 4 almost 10 years after the last entry, because it's big enough that people remember it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a weird thing, because Scream 4 sort of, it's obviously a sequel. It's nothing else than a sequel, but it sort of straddles that line, because the sequel is about the characters walking into a remake of their own movies.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, listen, they're commenting on all the remakes that have been done, right, with the horror genre. Yeah, it's just crazy. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, since we are talking about the fact that the horror genre is different, do you think it obeys different rules? Like, do you think a good horror remake follows the same rule as a good normal remake? Do you think it's different? Do you think it's possible to have a good horror remake?
Doing a remake, for me, I don't know, a lot of times I would disagree with, like, normal remakes in general. You know, like, not like the remaking Conan and all that. Like, and for me, it's like, you know what? I don't know, like you said, maybe because we know them and, you know, like, which actors played them and the way they were made, and we kind of like them. We don't want them changed. I think horror is more acceptable, you know, because if it's done right, I don't know about surpass, but I guess it could, if they do it right, they could reintroduce, I guess. Do you think it could surpass the originals?
Well, that has happened where it surpassed. It has happened. Like, I just mentioned A Tale of Two Sisters, which is a remake of an older Korean movie, or 2 or 3. Actually, it's a remake of a remake of a remake. And yeah, it is the best entry in it, and it's the third remake, I think. But at the same time, like, I think at least they can be comparable, I find. Like, if you compare the original The Fly from the 1950s and the Cronenberg The Fly from the 1980s, they're both different movies. To be honest, while I like the original more, I can't say that neither is possibly the superior movie. They're both very good movies.
They're also very different, right?
Yeah.
They're also very different. So
basically, they told a different story, but they just used the same thing of a guy turning into a fly.
Yeah. Through teleportation.
Yeah. Really? Through teleportation?
Yeah.
Even in the early one?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Because, like, for example, you state Nightmare on Elm Street, that, like, 3, 4, and 5 are the same as the first one.
Yeah.
If you remake that, it's going to be pretty much the same as the first one. If you're trying to keep the story the same, it's just going to be Freddy killing people. So
Yeah.
How can you really change that to make it like something completely original and different?
Well, the same way the sequels did, because as much as I make fun of 3, 4, and 5 for being exactly the same movie as the first one, they each offered different things in terms of their tone and their message. Like, the third one was a bit more fantasy-based, because Wes Craven has always had the idea of the horror film as a fairy tale, but he keeps things grounded so that you can relate to it. And so the third one, when he wrote it but didn't direct it, what they did is they just went nuts and were like, this is a fairy tale. Like, the third one is not very scary, but it's a lot of fun. Like, it's the one that people of our generation often quote as their favorite. Not mine, but a lot of other people quote as their favorite, and you can understand why, because they saw it as a kid, and it touches you much more efficiently from a kid's point of view, because it's a total fairy tale. Because this is the one where Freddy can turn into a giant snake worm, and create a hall of like deadly mirrors, and it just goes nuts with the special effects.
Okay.
And it's the one that introduces that he's the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs. Is his origin story.
Wow.
Like a nun went into an insane asylum for the criminally insane, and she got locked in on one weekend and got raped, and that gave birth to Freddy. And it's just such it's a distasteful story, but it's horror, so that's okay. But
Yeah.
But it all goes to the idea that like he's such a monster that even his birth is monstrous. He's the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs, and the reason why I repeat that line is because to a certain degree that line is freaking hilarious. It's just so preposterous. So they went for the fairy tale. The fourth one went for the camp value. Like this is the one that has the Freddy rap.
Oh,
and an 80s training montage. I think that's my favorite part of the fourth one. There's an 80s training montage in the middle of a horror movie.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And Freddy gets resuscitated by a dog pissing fire on him, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's complete camp value, obviously. Okay. So they went for the humorous tone. And the fifth one went back to a darker tone, and it was a lot more about the relationship between parents, and went more into the lesson that was more in the original movie. So they all communicate something different, even though they have the exact same plot structure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you can do that with a remake, where you can retake the story and sort of put it into a completely different context tonally. And to the defense of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, that's exactly what they did. They brought up a lot of the subtext of the story in the forefront, the child molestation part, which was always hinted at but never actually mentioned in the original series.
That's right.
They kept the theme of bad parenting, which is prevalent in the series, and of course of trying to sublimate yourself and escape your pain, because that's what Nightmare on Elm Street series is about. If you live your life in your dreams in denial, you die. If you stay awake to the dangers of life, you survive. And the movie kept that as well. It was about self-medication instead. All great themes, all great ideas, but the execution for me was incredibly painful and strenuous and just depressing.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. But I can see at least where they were at least trying to make a good movie that's different.
They were trying, I agree with you, but I don't know, for me, the original just very tough to beat, man. It's just...
It knocks it out of the park, is the thing.
Yeah. Even the special effects, like back then, I don't know, it's really well done, really.
But yeah, so even if it turned out to be an inferior movie, it almost is a good example of how you can make a remake, because what they tried to do seems like the right idea.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, because I wasn't sure, because to me, like, a slasher is just one guy killing other people. I don't see those themes and stuff like that. I see some guy killing people, so... If you do a remake, it's still going to be a guy killing people. So
yeah,
the thing is, that's the thing is that with the horror movies, like a lot of them, they like you said, like they have like messages that they want to deliver to you. So it's not just killing, you know.
Okay.
Just
I don't really see those messages. I see killing. So.
Yeah, well, I think it's why you don't like horror movies. I think to appreciate horror movies, you sort of have to watch them from that angle. Because otherwise it is repetitive and sort of boring.
Yeah.
You know, that's where taste comes in.
That's taste also, yeah. It's just...
how much you're willing to invest emotionally or intellectually into a movie is going to affect what kind of movies you watch.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes also you watch it for, you know, like, if it's really well done and you're just really into it, you know, the suspense and everything.
Yeah, because you're more into the visceral aspect of horror movies. That's a good point.
Okay.
And some movies, like I said, especially if you watch them when you're young, oh my god, they're very, very scary, yeah.
And that leads to a good point, where the visceral aspect of it is another reason why you want to make a remake. Because horror movies, as much as they want to claim otherwise, they do address at least a teenage audience. Late teens, if they're raised well.
Yeah.
But still teen, and that's because you know, or teen and early 20s these days. But like when you're in college and whatever, you feel invincible. Life hasn't really knocked you down in a way where you understand mortality in quite the same way.
That's very true. Yeah.
So horror movies really appeal to them because it allows them to get a taste of mortality vicariously. Okay. And the thing of it is, these guys, they can't relate to a movie that takes place in the 80s because that's not their reality at all. You know, you watch Nightmare on Elm Street today with somebody of that age, they're going to go like, why doesn't you pick up a cell phone? Cell phones that exist. Say what? And I think an update allows the visceral aspect of it to be more current to that generation, which is the target audience anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's why a good horror remake is different from a normal remake for me, in the sense that the question of updating the atmosphere, the environment, is crucial as opposed to other types of remake. Like, if you wanted to make a remake of Casablanca, please don't. If you wanted to make a remake of Casablanca, you keep it in the World War II. You know what I mean? But if you want to make a remake of a horror film, I'm not entirely sure that you should keep it in the same era.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you make it more modern, I guess, like for a modern audience. So I think that's why you could get away with it, I guess, and it, kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting to see maybe some of the characters that you grew up with, like in the 80s, like, now facing teenagers with cell phones and stuff like that. I think it makes it interesting,
Yeah, well, back in the day when the cell phone started appearing before Scream came out, or Scream 2.
Scream, yeah, something like that.
People thought that the cell phone was going to kill the horror movie because they can always call for help at any time. Mm-hmm. And everybody was like, oh, what are you going to do? And like for a while, they kept making the cliche. It was like, I get no reception here. It's like, why? Why don't you? You're in the middle of the city. Why are you not getting reception? Yeah. Change plans. That's a terrible plan.
Seriously, that was but they kind of make it work, for the good ones.
Yeah, they found a way around it. Well, Scream 2 is a great example where they just used it.
Yeah.
Everybody has a cell phone. We don't know who's the killer. It could be someone with a cell phone. Oh crap! That doesn't help anymore.
Yeah, I know.
And sometimes you do like to enjoy the original where they had no cell phones back then, and you're like, oh my god, can you imagine me being in that time without a cell phone or whatever? How much trouble can I be in, or whatever? It's just fun.
Or back when women were not portrayed as strong people.
Yeah.
Like you watch the Hitchcock horror movies, like The Birds. It's just like, I want to hit that woman with a stick. I can't understand why anyone would want to be near her.
Yeah, seriously.
You think updating the special effects also is important? Because you might look at some horrors movies like early on and like now it's laughable. It's like, this is obviously fake and, you can't take it seriously.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's an excellent point.
It's a good point, but I will say, though, that having seen, some of the best special effects, though, let's say, The Exorcist, or even, I would say the first Friday the 13th, or some movies like that, or even the first A Nightmare on Elm Street, especially that scene when she's getting killed in the air, when she's on the...
Yeah, they can't
recreate it.
No.
They can't recreate it as well. I find that sometimes where we think, okay, it'll be even cooler or better now with the computers and all that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I find that back then, some horror movies are so well made, the special effects, because they needed to be so creative and had really creative people that it's hard to replicate and be just as effective.
One thing to remember as well is that we grew up at the tail end of practical effects.
Yes.
We became teenagers just as digital effects started. Mm-hmm. So the movies from our early childhood are the best that practical effects had to offer.
Yes.
And we're still at a stage where digital effects is still being discovered and improved, and it hasn't reached that level that practical effects had. It can do things that practical effects never could, but it still looks like animation. It doesn't yet look real.
It doesn't feel real, yeah.
Yeah.
It still demands suspension of disbelief when I watch it. And I think for horror movies, suspension of disbelief is a killer. If you're asking me to believe in the universe so that I'd be scared of it, well, you're asking me to do all the work for you.
Yeah.
That's true.
What you're supposed to see is that she's being dragged around on the walls and on the ceiling, not respecting gravity, essentially, by Freddy, who's pulling her hair. Except Freddy is invisible, because we're seeing it from the point of view of somebody who's awake, who's watching her dream.
Okay.
So all you see is a woman sort of sliding, blood is gushing, and she's sliding on the floor, being dragged by something you don't see, by the hair, essentially. And then she gets into the wall and is dragged the same way, and then on the ceiling and dragged the same way. And what they did to do it, they created a rotating room, so that the room would rotate, so that she would sort of just crawl and let gravity pull her.
Yeah.
So that she looks...
amazing sequence. Honestly, worth watch. Amazing.
It's really terrifically done, and the actor who's watching it is actually the one who's strapped to something, so that he goes along with the room while she lets gravity do the work.
Oh wow, that's insane.
Very creative.
In the case of Nightmare on Elm Street, you can actually compare it to the remake, what they did with the remake.
Yeah.
They actually tried the scene, and they did it digitally. She's floating in the air, and she's being killed in the air on the ceiling, and the digital effects are well done. It's not a question of the digital effects could have been improved. The problem is that there's some randomness that you don't get. When you have the real girl sort of struggle and fight against gravity and let gravity pull her, it's unpredictable because she just falls little bits out apart, and it feels like somebody's dragging her in real life and is actually struggling to. As opposed to when they do it digitally, she just sort of floats like from one side of the room to the next.
Yeah.
And even if it looks real, which I don't find it fully does, but even if it does, what you lose is that she doesn't struggle.
Okay.
As opposed to when the actress is naturally struggling against gravity.
Yeah, it's a lot more engaging the original,
Yeah,
and it marks you like, when you see it. It's like just feels so the
Because-
tension and everything, you know.
Yeah, because the thing that scares you the most, and Wes Craven is an expert at that, is that it's not the girl being killed that scares you. It's the girl almost making it that terrifies you.
Yeah.
And so when she struggles, it's sad, it's hurtful, it's scary. It really gets you in the gut.
It gets you, yeah.
Yeah. Where she's just an unwilling victim and she has no shot in hell. You're just like, well, one more down.
Yeah, she's
You
just
know?
floating around, like, you know, it's like whatever. It loses its power, its strength, like you said, you know. And I would definitely recommend the audience to take a look at that scene in both movies and see what they think about that.
Yeah, it's worth comparing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably not Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes, of course. And would you remake that movie, The Little Shop of Horrors, now that we're talking about it?
Oh no, because the first remake is already terrific. With Rick Moranis and
That's right.
Steve Martin. That remake is so awesome that I don't want them to touch it anymore. It's just great,
It's been touched enough.
like your childhood.
Ooh.
And on that note, if you have any questions, comments you want to share with us, write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. Am I leaving out anything?
Nope.
Not at all.
All right, then. Until next time.
Until next time.
Yeah.
You're not afraid or anything? It's just you just don't like the genre?
I don't like their genre.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and tough, because we're going to start right away with something I like to call show and tell, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to recommend a couple of horror movies that have either been remade or are remakes themselves. Why don't we start with our esteemed co-host, Dennis P.
A movie I would recommend that has been remade would be My Bloody Valentine, actually. It was a pretty good remake.
That's the one, the 3D one.
Yes, the 3D one, correct.
I like that one as well. I think it was one of the first 3D movies that had come out back in the day before we just got really tired of it.
That's true. And that movie actually was filmed with the idea of it being in 3D. Thus, it had a lot of special effects and a lot of little 3D tricks, if you will, that played, that was a little bit of an eye candy, shall we say, and made the movie even more enjoyable.
I agree. It's a total geek show in 3D, which is what I love about it.
Yeah.
One thing bothered me about the 3D, though, while you're talking about it, there's one scene where he's looking at the screen of a digital camera, like of a camcorder,
Yeah.
and it's in 3D in the screen. And it's like, I've never had a camcorder that shows me images in 3D. And it's why is that in 3D?
Aren't 3D movies usually a lot darker? And horror movies are usually kind of pretty dark as well. So didn't that affect it at all?
Oh, you mean for the contrast, right?
Yeah, for the contrast.
No, I don't know. I think this one was done really well. I think with the real D technology and everything. And I didn't feel that it was much darker or anything for myself. I don't know, Dimitri.
No, I agree. Actually, it's really well filmed. I think it's Patrick Lussier who directed it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And he has a very nice color palette, which is surprising because his background is actually editor. He was an editor for...
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, welcome to Don't F with the Original.
With Nicolas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
I'm Dennis P., a horror film enthusiast.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. And today, we three are going to talk about horror remakes. We're continuing our big Don't F with the Original series. Now we're talking horror movies, which is why you, Dennis P., are here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, a little horror movie enthusiast.
We need that sometimes.
As opposed to me.
Yes, that's the thing. Nick, you don't like horror movies at all, usually.
Not at all. I watch a few of them. Some of them are good. They're worth watching, but general rule, I don't watch many.
Wes Craven for the longest
Oh,
time.
yeah, that's right.
And but he has a nice color palette. He did the same thing with Drive Angry, shot in 3D, and he compensates. He makes bright movies, even if it's a horror movie. Bloody Valentine takes place mostly at night, but he always makes sure to place the lights at very strategic places so that it has a nice sort of flow to it. Especially My Bloody Valentine was kind of nice. Most of it takes place in a mine because the killer's a miner.
Yeah.
As in somebody who works in a mine, not a kid.
Okay.
It's not Justin Bieber. And so what he does is he used the lamps of the mine to sort of give you bright splotches of 3D, and the sort of the edges of the frame would go dark. It was actually a nice contrast.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And it was pretty cool. Like you see when you see a flying pickaxe coming at you and stuff like that. It was very effective. Very, very effective.
Well, mine is a movie that is a remake and that is remade. So it's both. John Carpenter's The Thing, which is one of the rare horror movies I really like. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it before the remake.
Should you? Because the remake's a prequel, technically speaking, dealing with the Norwegian station.
Yeah.
So should you wait, see it after, so you can experience the story chronologically, or?
No, I think you should see it before so you can compare.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot as well.
Yeah, that's a good choice, yeah.
Interestingly, I also have a movie that is simultaneously a remake and a movie that was remade. I'm talking about The Tale of Two Sisters, Shuanghua Shuanghyan, I don't know, I don't speak Korean. And
Oh.
no, it's because I like it's Shuanghua Shuanghyan, but I'm pretty sure I'm completely mispronouncing it.
Okay.
The remake of it is called The Uninvited. If you've ever seen The Uninvited, it's not a bad movie. It's fine.